Here's my video on how I think The Last Jedi could have been improved. Before you go further, please watch my video on The Force Awakens, as this will obviously be a sequel to that. Just because I'm offering unsolicited changes on how these movies could have been better does not mean I think these movies are pure evil. I do lots of fixed videos about lots of things. This is just me throwing some harmless ideas out there, so please be gentle with me. I mostly like The Last Jedi. It does some stuff really well, and some stuff it fumbles. I'm pretty much on board with 2/3 of the movie. I never wanted Rey to be related to anyone important, so I was okay with what was done with her. I didn't hate the Luke Skywalker flashbacks. Instinct tells us our favorite heroes wouldn't attempt to murder a child, but he nearly gave in to his anger and murdered his own father, and thought better of it. Same thing here, it just didn't work out as well for him this time. And I liked Poe learning there's more to being in the rebellion than disobeying direct orders and getting good people killed. A lot of people didn't like this because the original trilogy characters were more fly by the seat of their pants, so a character learning to fall in line feels wrong to them. But Poe is an officer in the military. Following orders is part of that life. A lot of people, myself included at one time, said Holdo should have told Poe her plans, but considering his actions, she had a very good reason not to. The only part I did not like was Finn's portion of the movie. I talked about this in my Force Awakens video, but Finn had already gotten to a point where he was ready to risk his life for someone else because it was the right thing to do. This entire movie is repeating that character arc for him, and it drags down a movie that could easily lose half an hour. Most of The Last Jedi, even the parts I liked, I won't use because of things I did in my Force Awakens video. I combined Rey and Finn into one character called Kira. I didn't have the First Order destroy an entire solar system, so the New Republic still stands. Our heroes brought Luke back at the end of my proposed Force Awakens. That takes everything that happened in The Last Jedi off the table. I hope people don't come into this video thinking I had an agenda to take a massive dump on this movie. We start 3 years after the events of Force Awakens. Putting some time and space in between each film like the previous trilogies did, in theory, allows the characters to grow and change in between films, which is fun for the actors so that they're not doing the same thing in each movie. Luke feels older and more mature in Empire Strikes Back than he did in A New Hope. I'd want to see our characters in a different place at the beginning of this one than they were at the end of the previous one, which is hard to do when seconds have passed in between movies. Luke started a new Jedi Academy in between movies. He's still second-guessing himself as a teacher after the way he handled Kylo Ren, but at the end of my version of The Force Awakens, he said it was time for him to get back on the horse, even if he's not sure he's ready. While the big reason the New Republic wanted to find Luke was so he could be a symbol to rally the troops and get everyone hyped up so they could end this war, he sees his duties as a mentor don't begin and end with Kira. Since Luke went into exile, there have been other Force sensitives pop up here and there in the New Republic with no training, and it's time to remedy that. Kylo Ren did his best to eliminate all Force users of the dark and light side in my version of The Force Awakens, but he mostly focused on the Outer Rim, so people like Rose Tico have stayed under the radar. That's right, in My Last Jedi, Rose is a Force user. The Jedi and the Force and lightsabers are probably my least favorite aspect of Star Wars. I like the idea of a Knights Templar organization of peacekeepers that died long ago and one guy hands the reins of the story to a new kid, but trying to shove Jedi and lightsabers in every single Star Wars thing has always rubbed me the wrong way, so I bristled at the idea of turning Rose into a Jedi pupil. She should be able to do something neat without turning her into a Jedi, is what my knee-jerk response would be if someone else suggested this. But I wanted to do something with Rose, so here she is. In my Force Awakens video, I said there was a sinister force manipulating Kylo Ren, but it was not Lord Snoke. Y'all ready for this? Maz Kanata is the sinister force. Hear me out. I'm borrowing the broad strokes of this idea from a guy, Nathan Summers, who used to do this blog about deep-cut comic book theories. Shortly after Force Awakens came out, he did an article suggesting Maz would be the ultimate villain of the sequel trilogy. His idea was that Maz is an ancient Sith Lord who manipulated the birth and corruption of Anakin Skywalker, and was behind other Sith Lords like Palpatine and Darth Plagueis. According to some source guide, Maz is like 1,000 years old. Mr. Summers had a lot of what appears to be circumstantial evidence supporting this idea, but what caught my eye was this statue from The Phantom Menace that looks a lot like Maz. His idea was that she was using this idol to corrupt Anakin even that early in life. It's interesting, and while I don't like the idea of Maz being behind all the bad guys who came before, I think a version of this idea could have worked. And if you hate the idea of Luke nearly killing his nephew in his sleep, you can partly blame that on Maz. As she was seducing Bail Solo with whispers of what he could achieve if he abandoned Luke's teachings, she was also whispering in Luke's mind that his student was a danger to the galaxy. Not a full-on mind control situation like what we've seen the Jedi do, but gentle suggestions. It removes some of the responsibility from Luke, but not all. But Maz is not a Sith Lord. I'll be fusing Mr. Summers' idea about evil Maz with an idea George Lucas would have done if he went forward with his own sequel trilogy. Lucas would have gotten into the idea of the midichlorians, which may or may not be the same thing as the Wills, which was part of his idea for Star Wars universe since the very beginning, before A New Hope even came out. The wills control the universe through the Force, and sentient beings are like cars being driven by the wills. That's where Lucas's idea ends and where my idea begins. What if that's not a positive thing? What if the wills, or the Force in general, isn't too happy with the way things have gone over the course of these movies? For 1,000 generations, the Jedi were the authority on the Force, with the Sith believed to be extinct. That's not balance. That's one side of the scale being tipped over for too long. Then you had two Sith Lords controlling the entire universe, with the Jedi now extinct. Again, not balance. Maz is somehow in communication with the wills. Maz was a Force user like everyone else, but she was never trained by anyone, Sith or Jedi, so she kinda went crazy with power and developed her own ideas. Maybe the Force is telling her to do stuff, or maybe she's acting on her own. Maz wants true balance. No dark side, no light side. Y'all gotta go so there can be real balance. You've got your connections to the prequels, you've got your connections to the original trilogy, but it's still a new villain with a brand new plot, which better allows this trilogy to stand on its own. This also lines up with what Luke taught Rey in Last Jedi, about how the Jedi Order screwed up and allowed the Sith to prevail. Maz injected that into Kylo Ren's brain. Luke says the Force is about more than swinging a lightsaber and telekinesis. Maz believes she answers to the higher needs of the Force. It can be interesting when your hero and villain have some things in common to a point. Why am I replacing Lord Snoke with Maz Kanata? In the previous movies, I get the impression the only Force user left is Luke Skywalker. We are told there are only two Sith at a time, and they've both been wiped out. And we are told Vader killed the Jedi, so Snoke probably isn't one of them. Where did he come from? How did he learn to use the Force so well that he was able to bring Ben Solo to the dark side? A lot of people wanted him to be someone from a previous Star Wars story. I didn't need Snoke to be somebody we had seen before, but I would have liked an explanation of where he came from. Preferably not, he was created by Palpatine to corrupt Kylo Ren, because why? Cut out the middleman, Sheev. Corrupt him yourself. Oh, it's because there was no planning done for this trilogy. Got it. A lot of people poo-pooed the idea of Kylo Ren killing Lord Snoke near the end of Last Jedi. In theory, I did not mind that, though again, I would have liked some information on who this guy was before he died. Also, figure out what you are doing with Kylo Ren from the beginning. Are we supposed to feel sorry for him and say hip hip hooray when he gets a redemption arc? In that case, you probably should not kill off the closest thing to a villain this trilogy has. Or was Kylo Ren supposed to kill the guy we were conditioned to think would be the big villain so that he could be the actual villain? In that case, you probably shouldn't backpedal on that seconds into your third movie and once again have Kylo become someone's stooge only to become a good guy at the end. Once again, a trilogy of movies should not be a game of improv you play with your friends when you're bored. I like the idea from the prequels of a secret bad guy manipulating stuff, hanging out with the good guys, and nobody's the wiser. Problem is, we all knew this guy was going to be the Emperor, so not much of a surprise for the audience. But with Maz, she seems friendly enough. Whoa, hang on, she's responsible for corrupting Kylo Ren? Even though I won't be using Mr. Summers' idea that Maz is an ancient Sith Lord, the idea that she was trying to manipulate Anakin when he was a kid, I think that works. But then Qui-Gon Jinn brought Anakin to Palpatine, and that ruined Maz's plans to use Anakin to do what she eventually did with Kylo Ren. A problem with the Force in Star Wars is that we have no idea what people can and can't do with it. Palpatine, via Snoke, can apparently mind control a kid right under the nose of the last living Jedi Master, even though we have seen no evidence that he can do that before. The nebulous nature of the Force allows the caretakers of this franchise to do whatever they want. The YouTube channel Just Right characterized Kylo Ren as a school shooter, which makes trying to redeem him very icky. But if it was Palpatine controlling Ben, the murder of innocents isn't his fault, and you can have your happy ending with Kylo getting redemption, even though we've seen no evidence you can use the Force to control someone like that for that long and that hard. A simple suggestion, like these aren't the droids you're looking for, sure, but long-term, long-distance control, if that was possible, Palpatine probably would have done that with Anakin Skywalker in the prequels. While it's impossible to get some hard and fast rules about what these characters can do with the Force, I would want to make it clear Maz isn't completely controlling Kylo Ren when he destroys Luke's Jedi Academy. Nudges here and there, like what we've seen, may be more powerful than what we've seen, but Kylo is still responsible for any innocents he's killed. In the aftermath of The Force Awakens, Kylo has gone into hiding. Maz kept Kylo under her control all this time, but him accidentally killing his dad broke their connection. She's located him with the Force, but she can't get him back to exterminating Force users for her. Time to find another easily manipulated Force user to carry out her bidding. At least that's Maz's plan. But Luke's also been probing the galaxy for Kylo Ren. He looked in to see why Kylo ran off like he did. And Luke realizes when he was about to kill Kylo Ren, he messed up. Not not just because you shouldn't generally murder children, but because the darkness he sensed in his student was actually coming from someone else, and he thought it was Kylo all along. Luke's now aware there's someone out there who pushed Kylo Ren in the wrong direction, and Luke throwing green certainly didn't help. Whenever Rose or Kira starts feeling the darkness tug at their hearts, Luke kicks in the door and says, "Get in here and start thinking about puppies licking babies in the face," but he doesn't know where the threat is. Luke floated the idea to Leia that they should find Kylo and bring him back home. He isn't off the hook for blowing up a school, but Luke believes he's at his most vulnerable, and if this hidden manipulator fails at sinking their hooks into one of his new students, they might try to get Kylo doing more damage. But Leia is hesitant. Yes, she misses her son, but she wrote him off as a lost cause a long time ago, and him killing Han Solo only made things worse for her. So Luke has secret telepathic conversations with Kylo, checking in to make sure he's not falling back on old habits. But he sees Kylo really needs a friend right now more than isolation. With the death of Han, Poe had to step up and take on the more managerial tasks of the New Republic, as Leia can't do it all herself. Poe would love to be out in the field, but the theme of this movie would be, the thing you want to do isn't the thing you need to do. On that note, Kira's struggling with her role as a Jedi pupil. Kira was a former stormtrooper and wanted to live the life of a pacifist, which is difficult during war when your sensei was brought back to be a figurehead to inspire people to rise up against their enemies in combat. Not to mention, it's difficult to tell a story with a passive protagonist who doesn't do anything, so I had to throw away the whole pacifist thing. Part of being a Jedi, sometimes you gotta fight. You don't have to kill, but you'll at least have to participate in this war. She and Luke will butt heads because she wants to study all these old scrolls and meditate, but Luke is like, no, you have to act. Meditation is not going to get rid of these bad guys who ruined your life. And he's angry at himself for wallowing in self-pity for so long, so he sees someone who wants to take a step back and he's lashing out, but he's really angry at himself. Rose Tico, like in the movie, her sister died, but it happened before Force Awakens, so she's had plenty of time to get angry about it. Anger, that's one of the things that leads to the dark side. Luke will split his time between trying to help Bail, who he already failed, and trying to help Rose, who he is afraid he might fail. Speaking of Kira butting heads, she and Rose will not get along, for the same reason she didn't get along with Poe when they first met. Rose's sister was killed by the First Order. Kira is formerly First Order. These two are not friends. I haven't discussed any of the plot, but after you've set up our characters, what they're doing versus what they want to do, you'll split our characters into 3 groups. Luke gets a ping off Space Cerebro that there's a Jedi way out in the boonies. Even though he's got his plate full with students who have gone bad and students who might go bad, he sees it as his duty to help all the potential Force users. Leia senses something's wrong, but Luke dismisses it. Meanwhile, the New Republic got intel that the First Order is planning a mission to take control of a planet with a large deposit of kyber, the stuff that powers lightsabers, and was used by the Empire to destroy Death Stars. The new apprentices need some experience in the field, so Luke allows them to retrieve and or stop the enemy from retrieving. Kira has a premonition that something bad is going to happen here, so she stays behind. Rose can be like, you're afraid you're going to run into your old First Order buddies, or something like that. Our third group, Leia and Poe, will be discussing war strategies, with Leia's premonition gnawing at her. Kira will sit in on this meeting, even though she's by no means a high-ranking war council member. She wants to see how the other side lives, and her premonition is telling her whatever is going to happen in this room. As they talk about the pattern of the recent First Order attacks, Poe offhandedly mentions that their tech seems worse than it was just a few years ago. Whatever they bought their rebellion with, they must be running out of funds. Something clicks in Leia's brain. Why would the First Order want kyber if they don't have the technology to effectively use it? As this question is broached, we see the kyber operation Rose and the other students have gone on is a trap. There is no kyber, just 10,000 First Order troops waiting for a tip that their enemies would be coming unprepared. The Jedi are usually very good at fighting outnumbered, but these are students and the odds aren't good, even for a skilled Jedi. Speaking of skilled Jedi, Luke's also walking into a trap. No potential Jedi recruit here, just another First Order trap. Maz used her mind tricks to put the First Order where she wants them, and put anyone who might be a danger to her plans in the line of fire. Luke might figure out she's an enemy, so he has to go. Maz has been chipping away at some of Luke's students, so she would rather they not die if she can use them, but she needs them out of the way for what she has planned. Leia, though not as trained in the Force as Luke, senses something. Why didn't Leia sense Maz's evil Forceness before now? I don't know. Maz was keeping a lower profile when she was subtly corrupting Kylo Ren, but now she's moving faster and louder. So with no Jedi to protect the leader of the New Republic, Maz hopes to make her move. And then Leia's adopted son will probably be next in line to run things, at least until a democratic election can sort things out. I know there are other people who probably would outrank Poe, like Mon Mothma or Admiral Akbar or Lando, but we want to focus on these new characters, so we're going to say those guys are either dead or they're retired. Until then, Maz hopes to offer her advice to Poe, much like she did for Leia, and she thinks he'll be dumb enough to listen to whatever she says. And she could use the resources of the New Republic to wipe out all the Force-using factions she had Kylo Ren attacking one by one. As Maz nudges someone in the room to pull a weapon on Leia, a lightsaber flashes, cutting the weapon in half. Kylo Ren. Kira sees he dropped from the air vent. He just saved Leia's life, but he wasn't fast enough. She was still wounded before he could stop the attacker. He force knocks the assailant against the wall, then he pauses and closes his eyes. While med people run to Leia's aid, some of the other people prepare to draw their weapons, but Poe orders them to stand down. Bail points at Maz Kanata. Everyone is confused. He tells Poe Maz was behind the attempted assassination. This is greeted by a whole lot of noise. Why should we listen to you? But Kira listens in with the Force and realizes he's telling the truth. She wouldn't have noticed unless someone told her where to look. Maz has been pretty good at keeping hidden, especially among an entire school of people who can read minds. Maz somehow makes her get away. Everyone puts their attention on Leia, though many in the room are still leery of the man who killed General Solo standing among them like nothing happened. While the med people are working to save Leia, Bail tells Poe and Kira that Luke asked him to come here before he left on his mission, as he also sensed the disturbance Leia felt and wanted an ace in the hole. Poe and Kira aren't 100% okay with Kylo Ren's part in the death of Han Solo, but Poe at least sees Kylo tried to save Leia, so that is something. But Bail's not done. He asks where the rest of Kira's classmates are, and he focuses. In the last 3 years, Kylo has spent a lot of time trying to train the more mental aspects of his Force powers, and is able to zoom in on the Jedi students in danger. He's able to help guide them out telepathically, casting illusions for the First Order unit firing on them. Luke gets in touch with Kira and Poe, tells them he's a little bruised, but he's okay, and he's on his way back. But he won't be in time, because the med people say Leia has hours left to live. It's impossible to imagine what I would have done differently with these movies if Carrie Fisher was still alive. I don't love the idea of killing off the main trio of the original trilogy one by one. If you want to throw these new kids in the spotlight, you should be able to do that without killing the original cast first. But I think swapping out Luke's death for Leia's helps put Kylo Ren on the path the directors, at least one of them, wanted him to go on. My version of Han's death got Bail off the path of the dark side, but not necessarily on the path of the light side. But Luke warning Bail Leia might be in danger, that puts him back on the light side. Bail has a mental conversation with Leia. They both hug. He asks for forgiveness for what he's done, and she asks for forgiveness for not believing he would come back to her. It's beautiful. Leia dies. Bail tells Poe he will help in any way he can, and once Maz and the First Order are dealt with, he will surrender himself to the courts of the New Republic and answer for what he has done. As Luke and the rest of the students return, Kira tells Luke she's ready to fully commit to being one of his students, even if it means doing what she does not want to do. She realizes that if she had been more committed to being the Jedi that stabs people occasionally, she might could have saved Leia's life. She would rather die than get more blood on her hands, but she can't put other people's lives in danger because she's unwilling to act. And we're done with The Last Jedi. I've had a document about doing fix videos on the sequels for a long time, and the biggest thing that held me up was figuring out what to do with this movie, since I was starting completely from scratch. It's a gigantic relief to finally have this one in the can. Keep an eye out next week for the finale of my versions of the sequels. Until then, have a good one.